Hello, and welcome back. If you've been here before, a very big welcome and thank you for your support. If you're new here, I'll probably say something stupid, and hopefully it'll make you want to hit that subscribe button and stick around for a bit. So, today we are talking about the old way that they used to try to beat copyright, or try to fix copyright for games. See, I grew up in the days of DOS, Windows 3.11, the days when there really wasn't much of an internet. And back in the day, especially if they made like bigger games, they would it would come on more than one disc. We weren't lucky like you are today, where you load up a game and you can basically play the entire game without loading screens, without anything like that. And I mean, it was fine. It was fine until you had a game like Heroes Quest. Heroes Quest came with 10 5.25 inch floppies. It's the big black discs, and it would be fine until you try to transition into a screen and it said insert disk 6, and you looked through and you had 1, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, and you couldn't find the disk. And then you were sort of boned until you could find the disk. But it was a bit of a pain in the ass because some games you would move through the screens, or it was basically like back then they made games and they were basically scenes, and you'd basically walk off the edge of the screen and you'd go into the next scene, and then you could do everything on that screen. So that was fine until you lost the disc. And then there was the good old days of when they tried to stop people from, because back then it was so easy to pirate a game. Like you'd get two or three friends together, you'd each throw in a couple of dollars, you'd buy a game, you'd buy a couple of blank discs, and whoever was lucky enough to have two disk drives on their computer, it would just be straight up. They would take the discs home, they would copy A to B, and then they'd do that for however many copies they wanted to make, however many friends wanted the game. Like we were horrific for pirating. I think half of my games when I was a kid, up until the advent of CDs, half of the games I had were pirated, and it was just something that we did. I mean, games were expensive, discs were expensive. It wasn't like today where you can like buy 100 CDs for like $8 or something at Walmart. That's I brought some discs to put music on for my car, and it was like 100 discs for like $8 or something stupid like that. Back in the day, it was like $2 a disc or $1 a disc or something. Because they were making their money off discs. They really were. And a lot of businesses needed a lot of them, so they were making a fair bit of money off it. And then they came up with the idea of putting in the games either at the start, which I really didn't mind, where it would come up with a screen and it would be like, on page X, line X, what is word X? So you get your manual. Once again, I mean, if you lost your manual, you were boned. Because we didn't have the internet back then. We couldn't just Google what is line X, what is page X, line X, word X for X manual. Um, there were times when I had games like that, and I remember one of them was it was the original XCOM. Was it? I think it was like the original XCOM, and in the manual, it was just a page of codes, and like I was really like deep into it. I was like playing Superhuman. I was like really good at it, and the computer desk was an absolute mess. Like I had papers printed out, I had maps printed out, I had all these things printed out that because I used to play Dungeons and Dragons and a lot of like wizardry and Ultima and that as well when I was young. So I'd like draw up my own maps and all that and have them printed out and just big piles of paper everywhere. And my mom got my mom got absolutely nuts with me one day, and she tossed out a bunch of papers, and with it went my XCOM manual. So I went to load up XCOM, and I'm looking everywhere for my papers on my manual. I'm opening boxes. I got big shelf of boxes. Back then, like everything came in like a huge ass box. Really did. Like it was like a big box. And so I was going through it all, going through it all, going through it. I mean, I got lucky that the garbage hadn't gone out, so I could get it out of the garbage. But it ended up with like coffee grounds and coffee and food crap all over it. So I ended up just cutting out that page and sticking it up on the wall, which was fun. Which was fun. I mean, it's what you had to do. But we also didn't have like scanners back then. Like the old printers that we had were like garbage. They were freaking ribbon printers. So it would take like half an hour to print like 5 pages. Exaggerating. But they used to go really, really slow. And heaven forbid if you want to try to like print out a picture. But so we grew up with that. And then they started with games like I noticed a notable one for me is Space Quest 5. Space Quest 5 will let you go through the opening, or let you basically go through the prologue, so to say. You're Roger Wilco, Space Janitor. You go through Space Academy, sit your test. I think that was actually one of the better games because it had to like do a little exam to become a captain, and half the questions were just like weird. But then there were like half the questions in there. It basically told you what you needed to do in the harder parts of the game. So you need to sort of like take note, that sort of thing. But at the same time, they had I think you had to visit 8 planets in that one. I haven't played it forever. I go to my desktop right now. I'm gonna I maybe I gotta play that again. I gotta play through the entire Space Quest series again. But anyway, so the 8 planets all have different coordinates, and when you get to captain your garbage ship, you it tells you to go to a planet, but it doesn't tell you the coordinates. It doesn't tell you how to get there or anything. You have to look it up in the manual. Get the coordinates for that planet, plug it in, and then take off. And if you don't get it right, you don't go to that planet. You just go like Dead Space or something. And so that's how they used to try to beat how to fix copyright back in the day. It was a lot of manual search or a list in the manual of things to do with the game, sort of to try to stop people from copying. But the problem is, especially with the games on like the 5.25 inch floppies, 3.5 inch floppies, basically before CD-ROM, the computing power and the memory space that they had to put this was so limited. You'd only have like 10 different options that it could spit out, and it would spit out a random one. So if you got a game off a friend and you didn't have the manual, they'd usually write down the ones that they've already had on a piece of paper, stick it in the sleeve that it comes in, or that the disc came in, and you'd be fine until you found one that they hadn't seen, they didn't know about, and then it was just like, whoa, I'm gonna have to find out tomorrow what that was. Hmm. So you'd shut the game down, you'd go talk to your friend the next day, and your friend would be like, "I've never seen that one." But then they would like go home, they would look in their manual, and they'd be like, "Oh, it's this." And then they would like give it to you the next day, and then you'd be like, "Oh, cool." And then you'd never see it again because it'd just start popping up the other ones. But I mean, nowadays with Always On or stuff like Steam, Epic, and that, where basically it's a lot harder to pirate like that. I mean, if you want to pirate a game, you're going to be able to find a crack for it or a cracked version. Let's admit it. They can do all the best DRM in the world, but there's always going to be someone out there that's going to be able to crack it or find a way to circumvent it. But yeah, so that's how we used to have to do things in my day. It was basically you change scenes and you go to the wrong scene, you had to change discs. Or if you lost your manual, that game was basically unplayable until you could find the answers to it, which was a pain in the ass. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to me ramble on again today. If you made it this far, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and leave me a comment. Tell me if you remember the good old days of manual copyright, or if you don't remember that, or if you just think I'm old and I'm basically an old man yelling at cloud. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, have a good one. Thank you for visiting.